What does manhood mean to you?
Well, for me, manhood is really, I mean, in particular in this moment where toxic, unhealthy masculinity seems to just be just permeating our community, it really is about, showing up many times. One of the things I think about is a provider, but not just a provider with respect to money. It's about providing safe spaces for our families and being there for them emotionally. Safe spaces where we can get to know, give our children an opportunity to grow and flourish. So manhood is really, to me, it's about really being there for our community.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of King Crush Thursday, the series where we highlight and uplift Black men because, frankly, not too many people are doing it. My name is Val Gay, and I'm super excited about this brother today. Let's see. He is both an artist and a cultural leader whose work sits at the intersection of creativity, education, and social impact. And I have to say, he is responsible for me actually purchasing an album player. So now I have the whole LP. I've joined the club because of this brother. Please welcome Mr. Eric Pryor. Hey, Eric.
Hey Val, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. And I should just say thank you for that really beautiful album that you gave me several years ago of Marian Anderson.
Not
Singing
Dorothy Maynor.
Dorothy Maynor on one side and Marian Anderson on the other side. And
Right.
it forced me. I almost didn't want to open the blister pack, but I was like, I want to hear it. So then I had to go out and buy a record player in order to listen. And now I've been buying the LPs ever since. So I just want to thank you for that. Thank
Right.
you.
Oh, you're so welcome. What I have so much respect for Miss Maynor.
Mhm.
And when I had an opportunity to run Harlem School of the Arts, an organization she founded, I was able to, what they say, stand on her shoulders and help promote her legacy.
Yes. Yeah.
And so just, you're more than welcome.
That's awesome. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you are here because your presence here is actually putting a wedge in the very myopic window of of how the media particularly portrays Black men.
Right.
We typically see three, four, maybe four different stereotypes of Black men in the media. Most of those stereotypes are negative. And
Mhm.
while not all of them are incorrect, they are certainly incomplete because we don't see enough of the full narrative. And
Right.
ultimately, I want a young king who may or may not have positive Black male role models to be able to come to this repository, see the same 6 questions answered by now well over 200 amazing Black men, and hopefully find guidance there. And then for the rest of us who are neither male or even Black, for us to come to this repository, also see and hear these same questions and answers, and hopefully have our minds opened. And so I'm so glad that you are here, and I'm going to get started with the first question, which is, what does manhood mean to you?
Well, for me, manhood is really, I mean, in particular in this moment where toxic, unhealthy masculinity seems to just be just permeating our community, it really is about, showing up many times. One of the things I think about is a provider, but not just a provider with respect to money. It's about providing safe spaces for our families and being there for them emotionally. Safe spaces where we can get to know, give our children an opportunity to grow and flourish. So manhood is really, to me, it's about really being there for our community, standing up and making certain that we're authentic. Manhood is about being vulnerable. Manhood is about really, creating space for others. I think it's about being a leader, not a leader in that you dominate people, but the kind of leader that creates space for the brilliance within your, whether it's your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend, your children, create space for them to be the best version of themselves. To me, that's what manhood is about. I think it's very much for me connected to leadership. I don't see it as a separate, as something that's separate. I see the two very much intertwined.
That's awesome. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, Eric, who and or what is important to you?
Right now, I mean, my priorities, and I'm going to put my age out there. I'm 63 years old. My father was 50 when I was born. He was 63 when he passed. So for me, family and legacy is everything. And so pouring into my daughters, being there for my wife, being there for my mom, my spouse, my community, being there, and that's what's important to me. How do we show up for all of these various concentric circles of folks that are meaningful to us? Because at the end of the day, we're all just temporary on this planet. So what can we do to contribute? So for me, it's really just showing up and being there, mentoring. It's funny. I was on the train going up to New York to interview for a position, and a young brother, probably mid-20s, sat next to me, and he said, "What would you say to me? At my age now, what advice would you give me?" And I just was just very candid and straight up with him, and just saying, you got to be authentic. This is really not about masculinity. It's not about dominating people. It's about holding people up. It's about supporting. It's about mentorship. It's about not being afraid to be emotional, not being afraid to cry, not being afraid to show who you are. That's true strength. Yeah. And so, I was just honored that, to be able to speak to that young man. So those are the types of things, those are the things that are important to me right now.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So, Eric, how do you want us to see you?
Well, for me, as a servant, as a servant leader in my community, it's interesting, and how we're seen. It's funny. My mom and dad, I'm the youngest of six kids. And when I saw my dad when I was growing up, all couples have their thing, and my mom was about 15 years younger than my dad. And I didn't realize, at a certain point he was sick. He had cancer, and when you got a disease and you're dealing with pain, none of these things I knew as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. I didn't know those. All I saw was how they interfaced. And it really just, and seeing how they interacted with one another helped to shape me as a man. And it wasn't until later on when before our oldest daughter was born, we had a son that was stillborn. Monique was in her 38th week of pregnancy. And I realized in that moment that little things like my dad was a deacon, and, I had this, weird relationship with my spirituality. And I realized, what, this is about me. This is not about him. That, I had to understand and recognize how to navigate my life and be accountable and show up. And so that was, important, and just recognizing that kind of thing. And that, we all, as we walk through this journey, called life, that it's all about continuing to grow. And so my mentor, Al Loving, he had a series that he called, that he title he used in his artwork, often life and continued growth. And so my whole thing when we lost that child was, I realized at a certain point, how do I not just go through life, but how do I grow through life? And so that has been a mantra for me, no matter what happens? How do I grow through it? No matter how challenging it is, how do I grow through it? How do I learn from each thing?
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And so, Eric, question 4 is, what is your epic dream?
Well, I'm living it on some levels. I'll be honest with you. You know, family, seeing my daughters grow up to be these incredible young women and just being able to sort of sit back and just watch them flourish and just beam and feel pride that, wow, I got to be part of pouring into creating these beautiful young women. So my epic dream is really just in seeing our community flourish. I mean, I've dedicated my whole life. I've always worked in the nonprofit space. I started my career at the Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Corporation. So, I knew that I could probably have gone in the for-profit space and made a lot of money. And not that I've done bad, I've done okay for myself, but I've got to help people. So my epic dream is really just it's small. It's continuing to help people. It's continuing to pour into people. It's continuing to pour into my community. And the thing I love most is, when I have these opportunities to talk to young men and young women and give them the benefit of the experiences that I've had. Because I'll just say this, you know, uh, I wouldn't be where I am right now, or one, my mom, my mother and father. But once I went away, I played college basketball. I don't know if I've ever even said that to you, but one of the things that I'm born in Detroit, youngest of six, and one of the ways that I was able to go away to college was on a basketball scholarship. So I went down to West Georgia College, a little Division II school. While I was there, my best friend was at Morehouse, and my cousin was there. My best friend, his father, who I didn't know because his parents were divorced, and his father was an artist in New York named Al Loving. And so I got to meet Al. We went up to New York. I met him. He showed me the art world, and they asked us questions. They were curious about us. I probably was 19 years old, but they really wanted to know what we thought about what was happening in the world. At that point, I was a business major playing ball. I was so taken by these people. I saw my first loft space down in Soho, friends of his. We went up to the Hamptons. It was crazy. I just met all these incredible artists in the 80s, but they wanted to know what we were thinking about, what was on our mind. And I left there, Val, and I was like, you know what? I want that. I want to be around those kind of people. I went back, changed my major, stayed one more year, and then walked away from my scholarship and pursued a career in art. And I've been on that journey ever since. And when I transferred, I went to Atlanta. I transferred into Georgia State University. And then that's when I met my next mentor. I'm in an art class, only black student in there. And this tall brother walks through there with a three-piece suit on. I mean, he walked through there like, I'm like, who is he? He walked through there like he owned the place. And I beeline to find out who he was. And I met him. His name was Larry Walker. And Larry Walker was the chairman of the art department and also happens to be the father of Kara Walker, the incredible artist. That was my second mentor. He said, young man, anytime you need to talk, you can come to my office. And I went up there and I talked to him. I needed to make money out, struggling. He hired me to paint wallpaper in his house. And that's when I actually met Kara. She was about 16, 17 years old, still in high school then. But but men like Al Loving, Larry Walker, because my dad was gone at that point. You know, they made themselves available to me. And I realized oftentimes the epic thing is not always as big as we think. Sometimes the epic thing may be a very personal relationship because Eric Pryor doesn't become CEO of Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art without Al Loving and Larry Walker giving their time to a young man who they met for the first time at that point. So it's so for me it's I don't people always you don't want to start your own. I don't have a desire to start a nonprofit. Why do I need to do that? When there are people like Dorothy Maynor who started Harlem School of the Arts. So I've always felt like I could build on other legacies. I don't need my name to be up and be there as the founder or something. I felt like there's some foundations that exist. And I think that's one of the things that when we look at our community, we oftentimes, and I have a number of friends who are in the sports space, and they all, they want to start their little nonprofit. I'm like, you know what? You should look at the institutions that exist. Let's build on those instead of having a bunch of things at a sort of at a this level when we can take a few things, less things and really build them up. So for me, that big thing really is, understanding where I can bring value, and that doesn't have to be, me starting something that's about Eric, because at the end of the day, when I look at my family and I think about, like, my mom, she was the first person I saw in the arts. She went back to school after my father died to get her degree in interior design. And that was in the 70s. I was just a kid then. And nobody was hiring black women to do interior design work at that point, because when you do that, it's a lot of people with disposable income and that sort of thing. So she started a furniture store, and then with antiques and that sort of thing, and then that evolved into an art gallery. Seeing that from her and what she poured in, I ended up becoming, running multiple institutions, art institutions, and becoming an artist. My brother's daughter, my eldest niece, is the chief education and engagement officer down at the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. My sister, her daughter is a archivist with the Getty, working on the Johnson Publishing collection in Chicago. My cousin who grew up across the street from us, my mother also had a profound influence on him along with his dad. His dad started the first one of the earliest black greeting card companies early on. There was no mahogany. There was no images of black people on greeting cards when he did that. And his son is now the chief operating officer at the DIA, which is the Detroit Institute of Art. Probably three of my nephews and nieces, additional ones, are creatives, are make artists. This is from one amazing woman, just being there for her family and being authentically Dale Pryor. And so oftentimes I think when we look at what might be, I think, well, I don't know if you said epic or what the word exact language you use is, sometimes, it's counterintuitive. Sometimes we think we got to do something, really huge, when in actuality, I think more than anything else is about showing up in a real personal way with people and being authentic and honest, and give them time. Like I said, when I was on that train and this young man sat next to me, and we started talking, and he's like, "Hey, what would you? I'm 27. I'm here. He's working his job. He's doing his thing. It's like, but what would you say to me? What advice would you give me?" And it's just being willing to pour into people when they open themselves up to be poured into.
Wow. That, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Shout out to Miss Gail Pryor. Yes, that is awesome. Thank
So
you.
I've been very fortunate, and let me just say this, and I think one of the key things right here, and that I have to say, is we have got to. When I say we, I'm talking about men now. We got to understand that we have to show up for our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, our aunts. And showing up is about really allowing and supporting their brilliance, supporting their genius. So for me to be able to stand on the shoulders of Dorothy Maynard and help promote her legacy, it's huge. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of men is interesting right now. I was seeing something where this young brother, and I'll use the names, to hell with it. I was looking at this the guy Russell Wilson, the football player, and who's married to Sierra, and her ex, a rapper, Future, and they were coming at this, bro. He corny, he this. How's he corny? Because he's showing up and raising his kids. How is he corny? We have, Dave Chappelle got a skit, when keeping it real goes wrong. We have got to get over this sort of, what are we talking about here? Here's this man pouring into his son, and Russell Wilson made a comment. He said, I'm not trying to make songs about being a king. What's important to me is raising kings. And that says it all to me. How do we show up, And that is so important. But this whole toxic masculinity, the manosphere and the the orange guy, and we can't fall into that trap. We cannot fall into that trap. And I think that's the most important thing for us as men, is really recognizing, that being a man is not about dominating people. It is not. It's about holding people up.
Right. Right. Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have most definitely been answering question 5 all along implicitly, but I'm going to ask you explicitly. Mr. Eric Pryor, who are you?
Well, other than being a dad, a brother, an uncle, a husband, a son, a black man, an artist, a creative, I'm all of these things wrapped into one. But most importantly, I'm a friend, and I'm someone who allows myself to feel. And there's something, and allows someone who allows myself to be vulnerable. I'm someone who understands that if you show up and you're authentic, you don't have to try to be seen. You will be seen. And I think more than anything else, sometimes we are given certain things in life, and there are two things for me. But I spoke on the first one already in terms of the loss of our son and what that did, because a lot of people, you want your boy, you trying to have a boy. I said, when we lost our son, I prayed to have girls.
Mm.
And I prayed to have girls because I needed to be able to hug them. I needed to be able to be vulnerable, because as men, we're programmed, especially men my age, we are programmed to suppress emotion. We are programmed to be a certain way, where little boys don't cry. I couldn't handle that after that. After losing that little boy, I needed to really be able to feel my emotion, without fighting what had been drilled into me, since I was a little boy. And so that was something that was critically important to me. So more than anything else, I'm an authentic person who loves, and I enjoy and want love in return. And I understand that, you sort of reap what we sow. So, if we sow love and respect into people, that's what will come back at us, and so that becomes critically important to me. The other thing I would say is this: when I was in elementary school, probably it was like second grade, and even before that, I mean, school didn't just come natural to me. It didn't. I was held back. I failed. They held me back in elementary. It made me repeat second grade, and that was like traumatizing for me. I was never formally diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have dyslexia. But that didn't, no one tested anybody for anything like that. My father, he didn't, he would, we got whoopings, you got your butt whooped. Boy, that can't happen again. And so I just figured out how to navigate it. And, but I say that because it came with a lot of shame. And I really wasn't able to just be the most full, accomplished version of myself until I was able to not hide that. So I never forget when I was when I left Georgia State and transferred into Wayne State. And here I am, applying to these different MFA programs, Tyler, Yale, and a bunch of other ones, and I'm accepted. They want me to come to these MFA programs, but in order to graduate, you had to take an English proficiency exam. Now I would still am a terrible speller, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, what am I going to do here? Now the art helped me to understand process, so I wouldn't. And process wise, I went and immediately found myself a tutor. And when I did that, she had me write. You had to read this passage and then you had to respond to the passage. And, you had to speak to what was in there and make your points. And so I did my thing. And the woman said, oh, I see your problem. She said, you're trying to correct all your spelling as you're writing the paper. She said, now I'm going to need you to do something different. And I'm saying, what? She said, I need you to write the whole thing. You cannot make one correction. And then in that moment, and so I did it. And that was difficult because you got to remember, you don't want, when you are ashamed of something, you're hiding it. So doing the corrections, it allowed me, it helped me for people not to see, he can't spell, he dumb, all of that from that was still there. And so I did that, passed it the first time. And I realized in that moment, from that experience that you can't allow shame or something like that to dominate your space. You can't. There's no way you can really be the full version of yourself because the amount of energy it takes to hide something like that is tremendous. And so, these are the things that, when I say allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow yourself to be authentic, it's who I am, but it didn't stop me from being CEO of PAFA. It didn't stop me from being the director of the New Jersey State Museum. And that's why, I remember initially when I'd say that to people, Monique, do you have to lead with that? And it was like, for so long, part of the shame was people, when I was little, people would tease you, so, when you own it and put it there, no one else can take it and use it as a weapon, and no one else can weaponize it against you. So once I understood that, it helped me to navigate life. And also what it did was when I would go speak to young kids, there are a lot more young kids who were held back in grades or who were C students or who were mediocre academically like me Then there were the folks at the top of the honor roll. When spelling bees happened, I was like, it was traumatized. I couldn't. I would almost be willing to just mess the word up just to get out. Just give me a word that makes sense that people could say he don't know how to spell that. That people didn't, could understand. Well, I would have got that one wrong too, and so that those sorts of things become, I think important for people to understand, because our superpowers are always different. I think my emotional intelligence and social intelligence and understanding people, I think probably is beyond a lot of other people. Now, those people might be better spellers than me, and I'm pretty good writer. I didn't think I was a good writer because for a long time I didn't write because I was too busy, worried about did I spell it right? Did I get the grammar right? And didn't allow my thoughts to flow freely. And that's essentially what this woman helped me with was, hey, you got to trust and let your thoughts flow freely, which means you can't be afraid of people seeing your mistake. That's how you grow through it opposed to going through it. Hiding things is when we go through it. You see what I'm saying? And when we grow through it, then now you're pulling it back, which means you gotta be vulnerable. You gotta be willing to say, hey, you think what you want. At the end of the day, I'm gonna be authentically me.
That is so incredible. So awesome. So many gems there. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So here we are, already at question 6, which is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you or you wanted me to ask you that I didn't? In other words, what did I miss?
Well, I think you were very thorough in what you asked, and it's interesting. I think there is something. There's a guy in my building in our condo here, white guy, and he said, "Yeah, Eric, you got time to meet with you." And he's concerned about this whole idea of what's happening, what manhood is, and what it means, and what can we do. I think right now we have to begin to ask the question. So, how can we change this landscape? I think you've answered it. Part of you answered it by what you're doing in this series. And I think once again, when he asked me that question, he was looking for some epic thing. And for me, it was about opening ourselves up because I think people, when I look at social, it's like social media in a way. This is a weird analogy, but when social media, we respond to people, not organizations. And so I think that if we're going to make a shift in terms of manhood and how we show up as men. I'm talking about all men now. Black, I don't care what color you are, how we show up. I think it's going to happen more often than not one on one. How we talk to young brothers, how do we talk to other men? What do we do? Like, we in the car, are we around some guys, what they call locker room talk? Are we going to challenge things that should be challenged? That's manhood. Being willing to say, nah, brother. And I'll go there because I got 2 daughters. And so when I hear the cats trying to talk, like a certain kind of, thing about, especially with their boys, because they want to think, I'm like, time out. Wrong answer, bro. I mean, nah. Well, your son ain't gonna be at my house, because I need to know when a young man shows up, he's going to respect my girls. He's going to respect, excuse me, my young women and make certain that he shows up the right way. So I think now we got to ask the question, so what are you going to do? What am I going to do? And I hope that each brother that you speak to can look and say, and really think about how can we take, because I know you well, Val, And I know every man that you're talking to is a positive guy, a positive man who has a lot to bring. So that means, how are we showing up? What are we doing, to make certain that our daughters have a example of the type of men they should expect in their life, and how our sons should show up in their community, in their family, with their spouse. That is, to me, I think, a question that could be, I don't know if it's for me or just more in general.
I love it. I love it. I love your conversation. I love how you think. You've said so many things. I was trying to hold on to these nuggets. So many. I look forward to looking back at this interview and hearing your answers again, because you've said so many things about acceptance of self, the concept of when we accept who we uniquely are, then it's interesting. Then we can actually make our unique contribution to the world, and it's not until we, in my mind, that we actually do that we can actually live at our best and highest use and our highest purpose. And oftentimes the things that we are teased for when we're young, particularly, are the things that differentiate us later, and the things that we're celebrated for later.
Right,
And if we only could listen as children, or if we had adults that help guide us through that
right,
period,
right.
I think many of us would be a lot healthier and a lot happier. Perhaps save some therapy dollars later,
Yep.
put it into vacations or something. So that part, and then the story of your mentors and your mother, and one could argue, you and your siblings seeing your mother's tenacity and seeing her being authentic about herself not only encouraged you, but like you said, encouraged your nieces and nephews, which is really powerful. So we're now talking three generations of people authentically impacting culture in
Yeah.
arts, which is really powerful. And the fact that she was able to do it at a time with six kids as a single woman in the 70s, that's huge.
Right.
To have that kind of fortitude is really amazing. So there's so many things here that I'm so grateful that you were kind enough to share with us. I know other people will resonate with parts, if not all, of your story, and that's the point of this too. And that your
Well,
unique story
well,
contributes.
one other thing I want to share with you, and I think it's important, and one of the reasons I want to share it is as a black man with a family, wife, heterosexual. My grandmother, my her oldest grandchild, my cousin Walter, God rest his soul, was gay, and they loved him. They never treated him different. He was never treated differently. And that was so important in our family, was they loved everybody the same. And we got to get that, because I know when I was at Harlem School of Arts, I never will forget, it was a young man we had a strong dance program at HSA. And this one father was, it was, I don't know, I want my son to dance because he was afraid that he might, be gay. And I said, let me just say this, brother. If your son is gay, or it's not going to be because of dance. Dance is going to provide him experience is going to provide him a safe space to be authentically who he is. The last thing you want to do is send him in to a situation where he has to hide who he is, which could be dangerous, which is going to be debilitating. He's not going to become the full version of himself, and that becomes so important, is that we accept the people in our lives and just give them love. They're not going to, is sexuality is not contagious. You know, there's nothing to fear. You know who I am, and so whether it's him or other, I have other relatives. Luckily I came up in a family, and these were uh, you know, uh, my mother and my grandmother, and consequently my father and my they just loved and showed love and support for all of these young children at that time who came through. And at that time, my mother was six of us. And, I was back when, in the black family at that time, my mother was her two little brothers, but her first cousins, because she didn't have any sisters, it was like her sisters. So one of those sisters, one of those first cousins, she had nine kids. Our brother had five kids. I mean, it was a lot of us. It was a lot of us. And they pile us into these station wagons, go out to the park. It'd be 30, 40 kids, and a number of them, when I look back on it right now, probably the vast majority of them were straight, but a number of them were gay. A couple of the males were gay. A couple of the women, young girls, were as well. But it was never, nobody was treated differently.
Got it. I got it.
Nobody was treated differently.
Yeah.
They poured into all of us, and I think as men, that more, because our women do that more. Occasionally you get women who don't, but more often than not, it's the brothers. It's the brothers who, we have these weird, I mean, like one of Monique's friends, her husband, he was telling me one time, his daughter, oh, she know better than, her and his son, that she don't bring no dude. She don't bring no guys. I said, so you sending your daughter to somebody else's house because you can't wrap your head around the fact that at some point she's gonna be intimate. She's gonna deal more than likely with sex, and so you sending her away. So if something happens where she doesn't want to do something and she no or whatever, you're not gonna hear that. That young man not gonna meet you. He gonna know who you are. And so we got to stop, making it always about us. And where we're uncomfortable, where you're uncomfortable with seeing your daughter with a little boy, you're uncomfortable because your son may have or nephew may have feminine tendencies. It's not about us. It's about creating space for them.
Understood. Understood.
And that more than anything else, I think for us as men, when we can get that, then I think we can really, help. Because right now, I think to a large extent, a lot of that heavy lifting is being done by the women in our community because more of them are open, more of them are more authentic, and so that we got to, we got to begin to retrain ourselves and our sons.
I got it. I got it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your presence in this world. I'm grateful for your presence in my life. I have remained proud of you and the work that you do and your presence in these cultural spaces, how we met years ago when you were first announced as president of PAFA, which is the nation's oldest school for art, which is amazing.
But the oldest museum and art school
Museum and art school. Thank you. I knew you were going to tell
combination,
me.
that
Yes,
combo,
combo.
1805. And what's crazy about that? Founded in 1805, I'm the first and only person of color, black man or woman, to ever run that institution.
That's
Hope that one day we can, our children and grandchildren can stop being first in America.
yeah,
It,
yeah. Wouldn't that be lovely? And
that'd be so lovely.
Yep, it takes a lot of pressure off of some of us, you know. But I'm just really grateful, and you wear the pressure well, and so I just honor you, my king. I
Well,
love
thank
your
you.
epic dream. Absolutely, I love your epic dream, and I hope more of it comes true sooner rather than later. And I just really thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you, Val. I got nothing but love for you, and I really always had just tremendous respect for you and the role you play in the cultural arts community, both here in Philly and just how that is echoed across, this nation and this world. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother. And stay right there because I want to thank the audience for joining us today. I really hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And if there's a positive and successful Black man in your life who you want to hear from in this forum and want to see highlighted in this forum, please click the link below or in my bio, fill out the nomination form, and we'll take it from there. I am always saying that I don't really care what the brother does for a living as long as it is legal and not hurting anyone. I generally don't care. But he could be as impressive as Mr. Eric Pryor, or not. What we are really interested in is the broad spectrum, if you will, of Black men. That he does not have to live up to a particular ideal, if you will, but that the content of his character is enough to impact positively the community around him, starting with the nuclear family and radiating out to the rest of the community and all of us. Those are the brothers. We also want to be a part of this repository and this conversation. So please stay tuned next week for yet another amazing king. And please remember to spread love and have a great day. Thank you so much. And Eric, thank you so much. And all the best to your beautiful wife, Monique. Hey, girl.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.